Hello, everyone. Welcome to the platform of the Unacademy, one of the best educational platform. And I'm Dr. Devesh. I'm going to teach you uh, today's Master Blaster series. In this, I am going to discuss extensively about the renal pathology. And remember, this is very, very important. Gautam, I read your statement. Gautam, Yash, Abhishek, hello. Ashish, good evening. Mahesh, hi. Abhishek, thank you so much. And all these things I accept from you, and you also accept my gratitude for you all people. And Gautam, I have heard that your request that thrombi, and I will try to discuss it because already schedule is so jam packed. If it is so necessary, I will make a special lecture next month. Probably I will take that. So there is no problem. I will take that lecture. Gautam, I have read that message also. Right. Okay, so friends, we know that what we are going to discuss today, it's a renal pathology, one of the very important. And I'm telling you, there is again, most welcome, Gautam, most welcome. There will be again one question in exam from here, which I'm going to discuss today. Minimum one question, you can mark it in your AIMS exam, and minimum 2 or 3 questions you will be getting in your PGI exam, right? So again, I will show you our schedule. This is the renal pathology. Today we are going to discuss. Tomorrow we are going to discuss about the hematology and hematology only, right? So it is hematology. Then third day also will be 31st also we will be discussing, and this will be the miscellaneous topic. Probably Gautam, I will try to keep some embolic things in this high yield topics, right? So that you will have at least that actually that chapter is having nothing to discuss for an hour, but definitely I will discuss, Gautam. I will make a schedule for that thing also, right? So before I start, as usual, I will wish to Almighty that you all should have a great and grand success in every exam of your life, right? Good evening, Shashank. Good evening, Shashank. Good evening. Okay, you all joined. I'm very happy to see you all here. Sir, big fan of your teaching. Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Mahesh. I'm also your big fan. Those who are my big fan, I'm also their big fan. And I'm very happy that you all appreciate in that way. So let's start, right? So this is the number one question, which was the NEET PG question. And that was the, okay, Ranjit. Okay, Krishna Jyoti. Okay, fine. Okay, great. Thank you. So hematuria is, can you tell me answer for this question? What should be the answer for this question? I will be waiting for this, right? When you will say that it is the hematuria, how much RBC should be present in the urine? That is the question in NEET PG exam. Very nice. Very good. Very good. Very good. Yes. Yes, you all are giving a good answer. Very good. Very nice. Very nice. Very good. So, right, so hematuria means you all know that RBC into the urine is called hematuria, right? How many RBC should be present in urine to say that it is a hematuria? So that was the question here. So you must know that if it is more than 3 RBC, it should be hematuria. This is the line of Campbell. Don't fall trap to this answer. It is not more than 5. Remember, it is more than 3, which is the right answer. Remember, more than 3 RBC, more than 3 RBC per high power field, more than 3 RBC per high power field, for more than 3 times. Remember, for more than 3 times, and that should be 1 week apart, right? So that is the important thing. More than 3 times 1 week apart, right? Hematuria means RBC is coming, hemoglobinuria means hemoglobin is coming. Hematuria means RBC has been damaged, but still that architecture cell membrane is intact. Hemoglobinuria means RBC is totally fragmented and now hemoglobin is coming, right? Hemoglobinuria you will be seeing in hemolytic anemias, right? 1 week apart. Why 1 week apart? This is the schedule so that we should not miss any case of hematuria, right? So now we have to remember that this is the schedule we have to remember, because immediately if you are seeing that more than 3 RBC and you are getting the diagnosis of hematuria, probably that will be a wrong approach for diagnosis and the treatment approach also, right? So we have to remember this. Now coming to the another question which I want to show you here. I am showing you these are two diagrams, A and B. Can you tell me which one is the glomerular hematuria and which one is the extraglomerular hematuria? Yes, it will be taking 3 weeks to diagnose hematuria. Yes, it will be taking, it should be actually, it should be taking 3 weeks. Right. So can you tell me which one is the extraglomerular hematuria? extraglomerular hematuria. Okay, very nice. Who is telling this? Yes, a majority of you are telling that it is A, which is extraglomerular. I will tell you one thing. When you are seeing hematuria, as I have told you, more than 3 RBC, there are two possibilities, right? There are two possibilities: glomerular hematuria or extraglomerular hematuria, right? So these are the two origin of the hematuria: glomerular and extraglomerular. When RBC is passing through the capillaries, they will be damaged and their morphology will be lost. Remember, when RBC is traveling through the glomeruli, their morphology will be lost, and that is why these are called as dysmorphic RBC. This was the previous year question in PGI exam also. It's an older AIMS question also. Dysmorphic RBC will be seen in glomerular hematuria. And remember, when you are looking into these things, all these are dysmorphic RBCs. Can you see? All these are dysmorphic RBC. Can you see? They are not smooth round, but here you can see these are smooth round RBC. So their morphology is intact. So this will be called as isomorphic RBC. Right? So this will be called as isomorphic RBC, right? So this is the extraglomerular and this is the glomerular hematuria, right? So now I'm going to tell you one more important question, which was the AIMS question. Can you tell me what is the most common cause of glomerular hematuria? Most common cause of glomerular hematuria, most common cause here, and most common cause of extraglomerular hematuria. Right? So remember, most common cause for glomerular hematuria is IgA nephropathy. Remember, IgA nephropathy is more commoner than PSGN. Right? So when examiner is asking what is the most common cause of hematuria, answer should be IgA nephropathy is the most common cause of hematuria. Yes, Mahesh, you are right. Right, you're right. It is IgA nephropathy. Glomerular hematuria. Remember, glomerular hematuria, RBC morphology is lost. Dysmorphic RBC, right? RBC morphology is lost, and they are having dysmorphic RBC. And most common cause is IgA nephropathy. Whereas extraglomerular hematuria, RBC morphology is preserved. And most common cause here is the idiopathic hypercalciuria. And this was the question in AIMS exam. Idiopathic hypercalciuria. Hypercalciuria, right? So idiopathic hypercalciuria. Question, see how question will be asked in your exam. How examiner had asked in AIMS exam. Question was, a patient was having patient was having isomorphic RBC in urine examination. Which of the following will be seen? Or which of the following will be diagnosis? Or examiner had asked question like this also. Idiopathic hypercalciuria patient, urine examination will be telling which type of RBCs, right? So now it's clear. Hematuria is more than 3 RBC per high power field. Can be glomerular. Glomerular causes are the IgA nephropathy, the most common cause. And in glomeruli, when blood vessels are there, so imagine like this. When through the twisted blood capillaries, RBCs are going, they will be damaged. And because of that damage, that will be having loss of morphology, dysmorphic. So that is why the name is dysmorphic. Morphology has been altered. As you can see that morphology has been altered. Morphology has been altered in all these RBCs. So these are the dysmorphic. Whereas you can see all these are smooth round RBC. These are special stains, right? These are immunofluorescence staining, right? So these are not the routine stain or routine smear. Fine. So now it is clear to everyone. See, before I move to the discussion of further question, it is very, very important to tell you some basic things about the kidney, right? Especially the renal biopsies. When you are talking about the renal biopsy, I would like to tell you two important things. One is the electron microscopy, which I'm going to tell you now. And after that, I will be telling you about the immunofluorescence microscopy, because these two things should be very clear and loud in your mind. Otherwise, it will be difficult to identify during exam time also. And while reading also, it will be difficult. Now, listen to me very fast because I will be quick. Many cases are to be discussed today, right? Electron microscopy, when you are seeing the Bowman capsule. So I am making Bowman capsule in this green color. This is the Bowman capsule, right? This is the Bowman capsule. Then Bowman capsule will be lined by parietal epithelial cells. So these are the parietal epithelial cells, right? After that, you will see the capillary. So these are the electron microscopy, right? So now you are seeing a capillary. This is the capillary. Capillary is lined by endothelial lining, as we all know that, lined by endothelial lining, and this is the lumen of the capillary. This is the lumen of the capillary. The way I am showing you, remember, the way I am showing you this electron microscopy in colorful manner, same you will see, same you will see on electron microscopy, but they will be in dark color only. They will be light black or dark black, like that you will be seeing, right? So remember that and listen to me very carefully. Then we will see that this capillary is covered by the basement membrane. This is the basement membrane, right? And this basement membrane, over this basement membrane you will be seeing there is a cell which is having foot like process. So what is this? What is this cell? It is called podocytes, right? Podocytes are also known as visceral epithelial cell, right? So now we are seeing a structure of the kidney on electron microscopy. When you are seeing the Bowman capsule, you are seeing parietal epithelial cell. So space between parietal epithelial cell and podocyte is the urinary space, right? So this is the urinary space which we are seeing right now, right? So it is urinary space. If it is lagging, I think refresh your the system. I think my system is good and that Wi-Fi is working good. Just refresh it. I think it will be corrected. Right. So these are the podocytes. Right. Visceral epithelial cells are also called as podocytes because of the foot-like processes are there. Right. And when you are coming outside the capillary, there will be mesangial matrix. There will be mesangial matrix. Right. And mesangial matrix will be having modified macrophages of the kidney. So this is MCQ. What is modified macrophage of the kidney called as? Mesangial cells, right? So mesangial cells are modified macrophage of kidney. Modified macrophage of kidney. This is important MCQ, right? So now we are seeing a right. So now we are seeing the electron microscopic structure here, where we are observing all these things. Why we should know this? First, we should have a knowledge about these things so that while studying you can understand. Divi, I will tell you one thing. Even if there is a lag, now you listen to me, right? You complete the lecture. After completion of the lecture, when the lecture will be finished, you can download this, right? So don't worry about anything. This lecture will be with you even after, even some problem you are having, it may be because of your Wi-Fi or my Wi-Fi, whatsoever, but lecture will be intact with you. You can see each and everything very clearly multiple times, and you will be having PDF notes also. So don't worry, but listen to me. Don't go from here, right? Don't go from here. If you are bind with me, then you will understand more. That is one thing I will tell you, right? So I was telling you why we have to understand this thing. Second important thing is we should know where are the deposits, right? We should know where are the deposit. So when deposit is between the deposit mean immune complex deposit. Remember, when immune complex deposit is here, where? Below the epithelial cell. Which epithelial cell? Visceral epithelial cells. And above the basement membrane. This type of deposit is called as subepithelial deposit. So that is why I wanted to tell you, whenever you are reading your textbook, you should know that what is the meaning of subepithelial deposit, right? So now you can understand subepithelial deposit. Yes, Arup, subepithelial deposit is below the visceral epithelial cell, right? And what is the example? What is the example of the subepithelial deposit? So remember, these are the example. PSGN you will see, right? In membranous glomerulonephritis you will see, right? So these are the two important MCQs which had been asked earlier in exam, right? So PSGN, yes, even RPGN you will find, but I'm just writing important one. PSGN and membranous you will be having subepithelial deposit, right? So this is subepithelial deposit. When you are seeing a deposit between the basement membrane and endothelium, see this one, this location is below the endothelium, so this will be called as subendothelial deposit. So this is subendothelial deposit. Subendothelial deposit will be seen in which condition? Can you tell me? Yes, very good. It is seen in MPGN type 1. MPGN type 1 was neat question, right? What will be seen in the MPGN type 1? It is subendothelial deposit, right? Subendothelial deposit, remember one more name. It is also seen in wire loop lesion. Where you will see wire loop lesion? In SLE, lupus nephritis, right? So wire loop lesion and MPGN1, they will be having subepithelial deposit. So is it clear to everyone? So now we have to understand subepithelial means below the visceral epithelial cell. Subendothelial means below the endothelium. You can see below the endothelium and the above the basement membrane. And when you are seeing a deposit, between the basement membrane layers, so this is the third group of deposit, which is called as intramembranous deposit. Intramembranous deposit. Intramembranous deposit will be seen in, that is the another important MCQ, where you will see intramembranous deposit, MPGN type 2. Type 1 subendothelial, type 2 intramembranous. Did you understand? So that is how question had been asked earlier in exam. These are the NEET and DNB question, right? So now you can see three types of deposits, right? Till now we have discussed three types: subepithelial, subendothelial, intramembranous. Fourth deposit you will find in the mesangial matrix here, right? And these are the mesangial deposits. So this is the fourth one. Mesangial deposit is another very frequently asked question in exam, where you will see mesangial deposit. Can you tell me the name of that disorder? It is seen in IgA. Very good. IgA nephropathy. So mesangial deposit is seen in IgA nephropathy, right? So that is why I wanted to describe electron microscopy first, so that you should have one idea. When you are studying also, when you are seeing the question also, when you are reading the subepithelial deposit, your mind can imagine it is below the visceral epithelial cells and above the basement membrane. Subendothelial means it is below the endothelium and above the basement membrane. When you are seeing this mesangial, you should understand it is outside into the mesangial matrix. And intramembranous means between the two layers of the basement membrane, right? So it's clear. Thank you so much, Maurya. Now I will show you, this is the picture. This is the electron microscopy. Now you can see why I said I am making it colorful, but when you will see in the textbooks, it will be black color only, right? So this is the normal glomeruli or Bowman capsule. So now you can see here, you are not seeing Bowman capsule. You can see this is the urinary space, the empty space going on. This is the urinary space, right? And this is the lumen. This cell and this dark color is the nucleus, and this cell is the endothelium. As you can see, it is written, this is the lumen, right? And this is the this is the basement membrane, right? So now you can see this line which is going parallel throughout. I'm not damaging this architecture. So this is the basement membrane, right? Now you can see this cell. Can you look at this cell? This cell is having food processes like this. Can you see? This is the having food process. So this is the parietal epithelial, sorry, this is the visceral epithelial cell, right? By mistake I wrote, right? So this is the podocyte or visceral epithelial cell. Podocyte or visceral epithelial cell. So this is the visceral epithelial cell or podocyte, because they are having foot-like processes. Only parietal epithelial cells we are not seeing, right? See, our visceral epithelial cell, function of the visceral epithelial cell is they will help in ultrafiltration, right? So that point we have to remember. Sister Jyoti, right? So these are the important normal things we have to understand, right? So now you got the point. There will be urinary space, there will be a normal basement membrane, there will be endothelial lining, and when you are coming outside the capillary, this area is the mesangial matrix, right? So this is the mesangial matrix. So now you can see that is how you will be seeing in black color. When you will see the okay, I will show you the picture when time will come, right? Right. So now I want to tell you one more thing. Right. So electron microscopy, I have told you. Just I will brief you about the immunofluorescence microscopy. Right. Immunofluorescence microscopy in kidney, we will be expecting two important patterns. There are so many important patterns, but for you, right, for a undergraduate level and whatever given in Robbins, on that basis, I am going to explain. You will find two patterns, right? Two pattern, which will be, number one will be called as linear pattern. If you remember yesterday in bullous pemphigoid, we have seen the linear pattern. Remember that example, right? And second is the granular pattern. So why we have to remember these two pattern of the immunofluorescence? They will be telling about the pathogenesis, right? So they will be Yes, Srinivas, we can call subepithelial as epimembranous, but remember only in the case of the membranous glomerulonephropathy. Srinivas, remember epimembranous term you will use only for the membranous because it is not for all the other one. There is a reason I will tell you when time will come. Right. So linear is the and granular. These are the two pattern which we are seeing. Right. So linear is the it shows that antibodies are damaging basement membrane. That is the simple concept we have to understand. Whenever you are seeing the linear pattern, do you remember what we have learned yesterday in bullous pemphigoid? In bullous pemphigoid, antibodies were damaging the hemidesmosome, which were connecting the basement membrane, right? The basement membrane was affected. So whenever antibodies are damaging the basement membrane, linear pattern will be seen, right? And linear pattern, how you will identify, I will show you. Suppose this is the basement membrane, right? And immunofluorescence will be in green color. So I am making it the green color immunofluorescence because basement membrane is made up of collagen and they will be having linear pattern. So this is how you will be seeing linear pattern or linear ribbon like pattern. So sometimes it is also called as ribbon candy appearance, right? Which I have told you yesterday also, right? So linear or ribbon candy. Remember this linear, how you will identify when you will see in your exam, this will be homogeneous. Can you see there is no granularity? So linear and homogeneous. Remember this word homogeneous. This will be homogeneous green line. That is the point I wanted to tell to remember. It will be homogeneous green line. There will be no granularity, right? It means antibodies are causing damage to the basement membrane, right? Skin, you remember what I have told you about? That was bullous pemphigoid, right? In kidney, it will be seen in which disorder? Yes, very good. Goodpasture syndrome. So this will be seen in Goodpasture syndrome, right? Where antibodies are formed against the basement membrane, right? Which is type 4 collagen, right? So now you've understood in linear pattern, when you see linear immunofluorescence, there how you'll identify they will be ribbon-like or linear and they will be homogeneous. That is very important. They will be homogeneous, right? And granular pattern means it is a immune complex mediated disorder. Immune complex mediated disorder. So how is the immune complex mediated disorder will be looking like? Suppose I'm showing you this is the part of capillary, right? And suppose this is the enlarged view of capillary I'm showing you, right? So because of the immune complex, because immune complex is having antigen, antibody and complements, so what will happen? They will be having granularity in their green color. So you can see here it is I'm showing you granular. So you will be seeing the granular deposits which will be green color. You will see in the immunofluorescence microscopy. Wherever you will see immune complex mediated damage, so where you will see immune complex mediated damage, you will find this in membranous glomerulonephritis. This was the AIMS question, right? And it will be also seen in PSGN, also seen in MPGN, right? So all will be having this granular deposit. Whatever, remember, whatever pathology you are seeing, where you are seeing the granular deposits of the immune complex, deposits of the immune complexes are causing the damage, you will find granular immunofluorescence, which is also called as, yes, Mahesh, that is also called as starry sky appearance, which is non-specific terminology. It's very outdated, old MCQ. In my time, they used to ask. Now they will not ask, right? Yes, it is also called as lumpy, bumpy immunofluorescence, but it is not now used nowadays, right? Now come to the questions. Now you understood. Can you tell me what is this immunofluorescence? All of you, my question is, can you tell me what is this immunofluorescence? How is this homogeneous, linear or granular? Very nice, Cherry, Arun, Sunali, very good. Ojaswini, very nice. Everybody is telling the right answer. This is the linear immunofluorescence. That was the AIMS question, right? This is the linear immunofluorescence. Now you can see there is a line. You can notice here, line is all homogeneous, green color. These are all looking like a ribbon, as if so many ribbon is floating in the glomeruli. So many ribbons of green color, homogeneous, is floating in the glomeruli. So that is the linear pattern of immunofluorescence. Now you can see this is the another picture. Can you tell me what is the pattern you are looking at here? Is it linear or granular? Very nice. This is the granular pattern of immunofluorescence, right? So I hope you all understood. There are two main patterns. One is the linear, one is the granular. Linear means antibodies are causing damage to the basement membrane. Granular means it is immune complex mediated damage, right? So let's start some question based on this. Look at this question, which will be asked in your future AIMS exam, right? The question is 14-year-old girl. I will put the poll. If you are reading faster than me, you can solve this question. And I want to see that how many of you are giving the correct answer, right? This is the girl, and in history, there is a cola colored urine, blood pressure is high, peripheral blood smear was showing trophozoites. Oh. Renal biopsy was performed, immunofluorescence staining is there, electron microscopy, immunofluorescence, electron microscopy, immunofluorescence, electron microscopy. What is your diagnosis? Very good, very nice. Everybody is going very great, right? So now, can you tell me what is the immunofluorescence says that granular or linear deposit? Can you tell me? Yes, very nice. It's a granular deposit. It's a granular deposit, granular immunofluorescence, right? And can you tell me what is seen here in immunofluorescence, in electron microscopy? Can you see? See, deposits will be very small, gray color, homogeneous gray color. Can you see there is a homogeneous gray color? Right? Let me explain you this with this diagram. Right? Let me explain you. This is not crescent. It's not crescent. Listen to me carefully. See, this is the deposit. I am just showing you two areas. This area is also showing deposit. But can you see this deposit very small? Can you see all these are deposits? All these are lines of deposits which are running through the basement membrane, right? Running through the basement membrane, right? But these are very small. So deposit will be usually this size only. But when you are seeing this much of the big deposit, which is homogeneous, can you see this is homogeneous gray? So remember, this is how you will identify deposits will be homogeneous and gray in color, right? So it means it is immune complex deposit we are seeing on electron microscopy. We also describe them as a electron dense material, right? So can you observe something else which I'm not seeing and I'm going to say now? Can you see this? What is this? What is this? Like a Jurassic Park movie. Can you tell me what is this? Yes, these are very nice. These are podocytes. These are podocytes. Absolutely perfect. Prashant, Amya, all are telling the correct thing only, right? So this is the podocyte. This is the podocyte, means visceral epithelial cell. Deposits are below this. So what is this? Subepithelial deposit. And this deposit is very, very big. And big deposit, this kind of looking like a camel hump, that is called as hump deposit, or this sign is also called as hump sign on electron microscopy, is a feature of PSGN, right? So now you can see this is the feature of PSGN. So now we are seeing a PSGN and there is a hump sign because a large amount of deposit is below the food process of the visceral epithelial cell, right? Now look at this question. Granular immunofluorescence is suggestive of immune complex mediated disorder. Remember, minimal change disease, there are nothing like this, right? You will not find any electron microscopy like this because there is a minimal change, and that is the just flattening of the podocyte, right? RPGN will be, see, RPGN will be having granular immunofluorescence, but remember, they will not be having this much of big, this subepithelial hump. Remember, this subepithelial hump is diagnostic for PSGN, right? Membranous nephropathy, you will see something else that is called as spike and dome appearance. I'm not writing. Yes, very good. PSGN is older name, Mahesh. PSGN is older name. Acute proliferative glomerulonephritis is the newer name, which had been used in NEET PG 2017. Remember, acute proliferative glomerulonephritis is also known as PSGN. PSGN is older name, right? And acute proliferative glomerulonephritis is the new name, because initially they thought it is only because of streptococcal infection. That is why name given PSGN. But later on it was found out it can be because of many other infections also. As you can see, there is a trophozoite. So it is because of the malaria also. So even malaria can cause acute proliferative glomerulonephritis, right? So is it clear to everyone? So now we can see that it is a granular immunofluorescence subepithelial hump, and diagnosis will be acute proliferative glomerulonephritis, which is also known as PSGN, right? Which is also known as PSGN. So this is the diagram, and now you can see this is the granular immunofluorescence. Why it is granular immunofluorescence? Because these are immune complex mediated disorder, right? Cola colored urine refers to hematuria, right? Cola color, why it is cola color? Because blood is coming, blood will be altered, and they will be getting colored into the, they will be altered and they will be giving a cola colored urine. Cola color means it's a hematuria, right? So now we understood these things. Move to the next one. Now look at this question. This was the exact question which came in AIMS 2016. Immunofluorescence microscopy of the renal biopsy of a hematuria patient is given. Hematuria patient is given. What is your answer? I want your answer, and I know that all of you will be giving me the right answer. Very nice. It's a linear immunofluorescence. And what should be the answer now? Very good. Answer will be Goodpasture syndrome. Anti-GBM. Remember, anti-GBM, Goodpasture syndrome. So here your answer is straightforward. So this question is very straightforward. Right there, already I have told you this diagram. Right. So what we are seeing here, this is the linear pattern of immunofluorescence. Right. So this is the linear pattern of immunofluorescence. Why? Because antibodies are formed against glomerular basement membrane, which is type 4 collagen. You remember? Type 4 collagen. This was the NEET question also, right? Type 4 collagen. And remember, in type 4 collagen also, non-collagenous alpha 3 chain. Maybe a future question which examiner can ask, right? So this is the antibody which is formed against non-collagenous alpha 3 chain of the type 4 collagen, right? So type 4 collagen. So this Goodpasture syndrome, antibody mediated damage. So what kind of hypersensitivity reaction it will be? Can you tell me? That was the NEET question. It is type 2 hypersensitivity reaction, antibody mediated, right? So now we got the answer. It is a Goodpasture syndrome. PSGN, already we have seen PSGN and membranous, they will have granular appearance, right? So that is why it is ruled out. That is why it is ruled out. Minimal change disease will be not showing any kind of this deposit, right? So now you can see answer is Goodpasture syndrome, because we are seeing these are the linear immunofluorescence, right? So these are the linear immunofluorescence. The same diagram I have kept here, right? So the same diagram in the bigger version, it is the linear immunofluorescence. And below this diagram, this is the Robbins picture. It is written that it is having IgG and complement C3 deposit, which is giving linear immunofluorescence. And this language was previous year PGI MCQ, remember? So that is why I said, yes, this is associated with pulmonary also. Remember, in Goodpasture syndrome, first there will be lung which will be affected. And from the lung, then it will be going to the kidney involvement, right? So this is the rule of the Goodpasture syndrome. First lung will be affected, then renal will be affected. And remember, renal damage is the most common cause of death. And what is that renal damage? You will see, this is the rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis, RPGN, right? So both will be affected. Lung, he will be presented with hemoptysis because of the alveolar basement membrane will be damaged. So patient will be presenting with hemoptysis, right? So remember, this is the Goodpasture syndrome. Linear immunofluorescence is shown here, right? This already I have shown you. This is the granular immunofluorescence, which you will see in PSGN, right? So many times we have seen. So probably you will not forget. Can you tell me what should be the answer of this question? 51-year-old male, malaise, nausea, decreased urinary output, and renal biopsy is given. Microscopy finding is given. So what additional studies is the most useful? This is this similar question which had been asked this year in NEET PG exam also. Sir, any collagen association in Goodpasture? Yes, Nishant. Yes, Nilashis. It is Nilashis. Yes, it is type 4 collagen. Already you have seen, I have written type 4 collagen, alpha 3 non-collagenous chain. Type 4 collagen. Basement membrane is getting damaged. So you remember basement membrane, 4 under the floor, mnemonic, 4 under the floor side, type 4 collagen will be there, right? Fine. So what should be the answer? I forgot. Okay, right. So now we can see this picture and this picture. These are the two very conceptual thing, right? These are the two very conceptual things which we have to understand. Then only we can solve this question, right? As I will tell you, when you will see this, what I'm showing you here is the, right now you can see this is the thing which I wanted to make you understand. These are the crescents. Can you see? This is the parietal epithelial cell which is forming crescent. So these are the two crescents. So what I'm showing you here, these are the crescents, right? And what we are seeing here, see this area, sorry, this area, you can see there is a rupture of the basement membrane, right? So these are the rupture of the basement membrane, rupture of the basement membrane. So crescents are most characteristic histological finding seen in RPGN. That is the older NEET PG question. Mahesh, I am coming. Don't worry, I am coming, and I will tell you where and how it is formed. So in RPGN, most characteristic histological finding, is the crescent formation, right? I should know this. Right? So RPGN, most characteristic histological finding in RPGN is the crescent formation, right? So this is the answer, which was the question in the All India exam, right? Okay, so you all are guessing about the crescent. Okay, now let me tell you how this crescent will be formed. I will just brief you in the quick manner how this crescent will be formed. Right? Look at this again. Recall how I have taught you. There is a Bowman capsule, and Bowman capsule was lined by parietal epithelial cell, capillary, endothelial lining, lumen, basement membrane, right? So all these things we understood, and there was a visceral epithelial cell like this, right? So now we have seen visceral epithelial cell is there. This is parietal epithelial cell, right? Now try to understand what happens. Listen to me very carefully. This is very, very conceptual. Here you will get 3 to 4 questions in your exam, right? What happens whenever there is any inflammation, right? In RPGN, what is happening? There is an inflammation because of immune complex, because of the antibody, right? So this inflammation will activate the coagulation pathway. Remember, this will activate the coagulation pathway. Because of the coagulation pathway activation, what will be formed here? Fibrin. Number one important point, right? Fibrin will be formed. Number one important point. Try to understand. Second point, what I want to say, that in RPGN, because it is happening in kidney, so this inflammation, again I'm drawing here, this inflammation, whatever cytokine they will release, this will cause rupture of the basement membrane. Rupture of the basement membrane. So there will be rupture of the basement membrane. So what will happen when you will see normally basement membrane will be round and smooth, but because of the rupture, what will happen, that continuity is lost. So that is why they will be having wrinkling. So rupture of the basement membrane leading to the wrinkling of the basement membrane. That is the question in NEET PG exam. Wrinkling of the basement membrane on electron microscopy is a feature of. Remember, this is the important MCQ. On electron microscopy, wrinkling is seen in RPGN, right? So that is how question had been asked in exam, right? So now it is clear, because of the wrinkling, because of the rupture of the basement membrane, now they will wrinkle, and that is the feature of the RPGN electron microscopy. Let's start here. What happens? Again, I repeat. What happens because of inflammation? What happens because of inflammation? As I have told you, there will be formation of cytokine. Cytokine will come. What they will do? They will cause rupture of the basement membrane. Number one, right? So now you can see there is a rupture of the basement membrane, which I'm showing like this. It's not ring like, it's like wrinkling. Prerna, it's like wrinkling. Wrinkling will be seen in majority of the RPGN. I'm not saying all type, but majority of the RPGN will be seen, right? And this inflammation, cytokine, is going to damage the endothelium. So now we are seeing two things. Because of the inflammatory cytokine, one is endothelial damage, and second is basement membrane rupture. right? So these are the two things we are seeing. And second thing, what we have observed, there will be formation of the pink fibrin. So suppose I am making you, this is the fibrin. What is fibrin? It's a sticky material, right? Fibrin is a sticky material. So what will happen? Fibrin will attach with the inflammatory cell like macrophages. So fibrin will attach with inflammatory cell like macrophage. So this is the macrophage, right? Whatever area has been ruptured, through that ruptured area, now this fibrin and macrophage together, because it's sticky, so they will come outside. Can you see? Now I'm showing you, this is the fibrin and this is the macrophage, which is attached to this, because fibrin is a glue-like substance. Fibrin is a glue-like substance. So they are getting attached to the macrophage, and now both things are coming outside through the ruptured basement membrane. And when they will come outside, see, this is inflammatory, right? And cytokines will act on the parietal epithelial cell also. So this parietal epithelial cell, they will start proliferation. Now they will start proliferation. So these are proliferating. Can you see? These are proliferating. These are proliferating. See, when they are proliferating, they should fall down into the urinary space and they should shed away through the urine. But why not it is happening? The question is, why not it is happening? They should fall down. They should go away. But why they are not going away? Who is holding them together? Who is sticking them together? Very good, Gautam. It is the fibrin, right? Try to understand. This is the fibrin who is here, attaching all these together, right? Fibrin is attaching them together. And this fibrin is along with the macrophage also, right? So now you can see that entire structure which I have made. This entire structure is looking like a crescent, right? So this is called crescent. Those who were asking what is the crescent made up of, this was the NEET PG question. So what is the crescent made up of? Can you dictate me one by one? Parietal epithelial cell plus fibrin plus monocyte or macrophage. So these are the three substances together, they form crescent, right? So now you understood how is the crescent formed. Crescents are formed of three substances: parietal epithelial cell, fibrin, macrophage. Why I had explained like this? This was the older AIMS question. In crescent formation, which is the most important factor? Can you tell me what is the most important factor for the crescent formation? Can you tell me? Very nice, Gautam, Amya, and Arup all are telling the correct answer. It is the fibrin which is the most important factor. Remember, in crescent formation, fibrin is the most important factor. Right? So fibrin is the most important factor for the crescent, right? Why crescent is important for a clinician? When I am reporting you, number of crescents are more. Number of crescents are more. If number of crescents are more, remember it is number only. This will correlate to the poor prognosis. Poor prognosis. Remember, it is only number, not the size, not the shape. Remember, crescents are for correlation to the prognosis. And what will be correlating? It is the number of crescents only. Remember, only numbers of the crescent. That's all. Nothing else. No shape, no size. It's just number of the crescent. If number is more, prognosis will be bad. Number is more, prognosis will be bad. Right? So that is how we have understood. Okay, this is the crescent. Right? So now you can see, now you come back to the diagram. Can you see? These are the crescents. These are the crescents, right? And can you see? This is the rupture of the basement membrane. So do you think that it will be anti-nuclear antibody? Do you think that it will be anti-nuclear antibody? Rupture of the basement membrane is there, right? So see, this can be, that's what I said, that rupture of the basement membrane is not in all kind of thing, because anti-nuclear antibody you will see in SLE, lupus nephritis, but in lupus nephritis you will not find rupture of the basement membrane. Rupture of the basement membrane will be seen where antibodies are specifically targeting the basement membrane. Antibody is specifically targeting the basement membrane. So that is why what should be the right answer? Anti-glomerular basement membrane antibody. Where you will see this Goodpasture syndrome. So this is the Goodpasture syndrome where you will be finding this finding. So this will be the right answer. Phospholipase A2 receptor antigen. This was the NEET question previous year. Phospholipase A2 receptor antigen is seen in which glomerulopathy? Very nice, Jiten. It is seen in membranous glomerulonephritis, right? So it is seen in membranous glomerulonephritis. Phospholipase A2 receptor antigen will correlate to the prognosis also. Remember, it will correlate to the prognosis. Yes, in Goodpasture, see all RPGN, you will see the crescents. In all RPGN, you will see the crescent. It's not only Goodpasture, all RPGN, you can see the crescent, right? Right, Mahesh? We can see, right, Shipra, we can see in all kind of RPGN, right? So due to crescent, GFR will decrease. Obviously, that they will be having rapid progressive glomerulonephritis. Remember, rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis, everything will be damaged, right? So now we can see phospholipase A2 receptor antigen is for the membranous, and anti-DNase antibody is seen in PSGN. And remember, anti-DNase antibody is superior to the anti-streptolysin O titer. That was the question in NEET PG 2016. What is the best one to diagnose serologically? What is the best one to diagnose PSGN? So both options were given. That is why I have written anti-DNase is better than ASO titer. Why not ANCA? Where is ANCA I have written? I think ANCA is not written anywhere. Right, so it is not ANCA will not be there here, right? So anti-nuclear antibody, if you are saying that anti-nuclear antibody, why not it will be there? Because anti-nuclear antibodies are not here. The precise answer is the see that electron microscopy. Can you see the electron microscopy? There is a rupture of the basement membrane. So rupture of the basement membrane will be only by the antibody, right? So that is why it is this. Anti-nuclear antibody will not be doing this kind of rupture and the wrinkling, right? So it will be peculiar feature of the Goodpasture syndrome, right? So this will be a Goodpasture syndrome, right? So now we can see this is the picture we have explained. Now you can see this is the bigger picture where it is a crescent formation is there. You can see there are two crescents in this renal biopsy. So these are the crescents already I have described you. So I'm not going to tell many more things here. You can see here there is a rupture of the basement membrane, and this is the wrinkling of the basement membrane. Right, this is the wrinkling of the basement membrane. Now come to this important previous year AIIMS question. This was the November AIIMS question. Can you tell me what is the diagnosis here? Yes, Abhishek, INA can be seen. Yes, anybody? Yes, very good, very nice. Can you tell me what is this? Can you tell me what is this phenomena I am showing you here, where you are seeing IgG antibody, IgA antibody, IgM antibody, C3 complement, C1q complement. What is this? Very nice. This is called full house immunostaining. Remember, this condition is called as full house phenomena or full house immunostaining. Full house immunostaining means they are positive for 5 types of immunofluorescence. Remember, full house means this will be positive for 5 types of immunofluorescence. Out of these 5, 3 will be antibodies. So who are these 3 antibodies? IgG, IgA, IgM, right? And 2 are the complements. Who are these complements? C3 and C1q, right? So 2 complements and 3 antibodies. 3 antibodies and 2 complements, right? So this is called full house phenomena, right? And remember, this full house immunostaining is classically seen in lupus nephritis. Remember, it is classically seen in lupus nephritis. That is the important thing we have to keep in mind. Examiner had shown this diagram, which I have shown you here. This was the AIIMS question, right? What is most likely diagnosis? And answer is now you know, it is the lupus nephritis or SLE. Right? This is the second diagram. Can you see this? What is this? Anybody? Yes, somebody has told me it's a wire loop lesion, right? It's a wire loop lesion. So now I am going to show you this. Right? See here it is written. It's a full house phenomena where you can see 3 antibodies are there, right? 3 antibodies are there and 2 complements are there, C3 and C1q, right? And this is classically seen in SLE or lupus nephritis. Look at this picture. What is this? This is the pass stain. It's a special stain. Pass staining is there. In this pass staining, what we are seeing, I just make another simple diagram. This is the capillary endothelium. Just for the representative diagram I'm making here, it's a capillary endothelium. And capillary endothelium, in the pass staining, you can see below the endothelium there are deposits like this. Can you see? There are deposits like this. So these are the subendothelial deposit, right? Subendothelial deposit. Can you see here? I'm just circling with green color. Can you see? This is the another deposit. Can you see? This is the another deposit. Can you see? There are deposits. So like this, you can see so many loops are there. Can you notice? So many loops are there, which I'm encircling. All these are loops. Wire loop inclusion, right? So what we are seeing, that wire loop lesion. So this is the wire loop lesion. So because of the subendothelial deposit, there is a formation of wire loop lesion, right? So this is the wire loop lesion we are seeing. So examiner had asked this question: wire loop lesion is seen in SLE or lupus nephritis, right? This is number one question. Number two question: wire loop lesion is what kind of deposit? Subendothelial deposit. Remember, it is subendothelial deposit which will be forming wire loop lesion. Right now, I am your pathologist. You are a nephrologist, or you can say you are a neurosurgeon. You have sent me one renal biopsy. I have given you report wire loop lesions are seen. Kindly correlate clinically. So, what is your clinical correlation? This disease with wire loop lesion is a active disease or dormant disease? Good prognosis or bad prognosis? Can you tell me? Can you tell me the right answer for this thing? Wire loop lesion is suggestive of. This is the all India question. Wire loop lesion is suggestive of very good, bad prognosis, active disease. Remember, wire loop lesion is suggestive of active disease. And if disease is active, so obviously prognosis will be bad. Bad prognosis, right? So this was the question in all India exam. So now what I have shown you here in this picture, this is the pass stain. Why we are seeing so many loops? Because there is a deposition of the immune complexes at the subendothelial area. At the subendothelial area, yes, it will be progressive. MASH, it will be progressive. Name itself is telling RPGN, rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis, right? So that point we have to be very clear, right? So active disease, it will be having bad prognosis because it's having progression, right? It's having faster progression, right? So these are important point about the SLE. So remember, full house phenomena has been asked. So maybe the next question will be this image, or with this image, examiner will be asking what is the inference? Active disease, bad prognosis. Right. Let us see this new question. Right. This was the previous year AIMS question again, and it's a beautiful MCQ. Now you can see that. What is this? 5-year-old. So I just put this Paul, right? So can you tell me what should be the right answer here? Yes. Yes, SLE and good pasture both are RPGN. Yes, both are RPGN. RPGN 1 example is good pasture. RPGN 2 example will be SLE. RPGN 1 is the anti-basement membrane. RPGN 2 is immune complex mediated disorders, right? Fine, clear? Yes, thank you. So, yes, I think answer is still coming. Membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis. Okay. So see this. What is this in this? History is vague. Periorbital edema, facial puffiness, massive proteinuria. That is the nephrotic syndrome history, right? And we are seeing all our nephrotic syndrome only here, right? So on what is the catch point here is the electron microscopy and this one. Can you tell me this electron, this immunofluorescence microscopy is what kind of appearance? Linear or granular? Can you tell me? Very good. It's a granular deposit. So granular deposit means immune complex mediated damage, right? So number one thing we found out that this disorder will be immune complex mediated, right? Number two, when you are going and seeing the electron microscopy here, I will show you on the next page. Now look at this electron microscopy. In this electron microscopy, can you tell me where is the deposit? It looks like within the basement membrane, right? It looks like within the basement membrane, but it is not. I will just tell you what is happening here. Suppose I am showing you this is the basement membrane. Just a diagrammatic representation. That is the basement membrane. Basement membrane surface will be having phospholipase A2 receptor antigen. This is the phospholipase A2 receptor, which is like an antigen, right? This is like an antigen. On this antigen, you will see there is a antibody deposition. So there will be antibody deposition. See, this is the representative diagram. So what will happen? Actually, what we are seeing in this electron microscopy, I'm extending. So really what we are seeing in the practical view, we are seeing that immune complex deposit is like this. Immune complex deposit is like this, as if they are inside the basement membrane. You remember somebody had asked me that epimembranous deposit can be used for all subepithelial deposit, and I said no, it is not for all. It is only for the membranous. So this is the membranous glomerulonephropathy, where phospholipase A2 receptor antigen is there. They are forming these subepithelial deposits, but in this subepithelial deposit, you can see they are present inside the membrane. That is why they are called as epimembranous. It looks like as if they are within the basement membrane. That is why it is also called as epimembranous deposit. So remember, it is the membranous glomerulonephritis or glomerulonephropathy. Right, now look at this again. Look at this again. What we are observing, in between the basement membrane is there. In between the basement membrane is there, and immune complex is here. Immune complex is here. So this pattern where you are seeing the basement membrane and then immune complex, then basement membrane, and then immune complex, right? So here we have to understand. I'll just make it sure that you could understand this clearly. This is the basement membrane, right? And with the green color, what I'm marking, these are the immune complexes, right? These are the immune complexes. Fine. So basement membrane. Okay, I have to use the same color. Basement membrane is like a spike. Remember, who is a spike? Basement membrane is like a spike. And I will use the green color, right? And this immune complex is like a dome. You understand? Dome is the immune complex. So I think it's clear to everyone. Can I see your thumbs up if it's clear to you? Yes, very good. Yes, right. So now what I am showing you here in this picture, very nice, very good. Absolutely perfect, 100%, right? So what I am showing you here, it is the spike and dome appearance, right? So electron microscopy, what I am showing you here is the spike and dome appearance. Let us see inside this. See, already I have told you this is the basement membrane, right? Now you can see this is the basement membrane, and dark color is the immune complex deposit. This is the immune complex deposit, right? These are all immune complex deposit. Immune complex deposit, right? So these are all immune complex deposit in green color. And now I am showing you this red color. This green color I am showing you, these are the basement membrane, right? You can see basement membrane here. You can see basement membrane here. You can see basement membrane here, right? So this is the basement membrane is the spike, and immune complexes are the dome. So this is the spike dome appearance. So when you find granular immunofluorescence, this is the granular immunofluorescence. Granular immunofluorescence plus spike and dome appearance, your answer should be membranous glomerulonephropathy, right? So answer will be membranous glomerulonephropathy, right? So now I can ask you one question. Spike and dome appearance is best seen. Look at the question. Best seen by which microscopy? Electron immunofluorescence or light microscopy with a special stain? Can you tell me the answer in the comment box? See why I had asked. Okay, Prashant is telling light microscopy. Majority of you are telling. Cherry is telling light microscopy. Arup is telling light microscopy with a special stain. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, let's stop this. Now try to understand. When I was showing you this electron microscopy, if I was not explaining this is the spike, this is the dome, this is the spike, this is the dome, will you understand that this is the spike and dome? I think you will not understand, right? Remember, that is the fact. I'm saying, okay, these are the immune complexes, these are the immune complexes, the dome, and basement membrane is a spike, but it is not looking like that. So remember this point. It is best seen by light microscopy with special stain. Right, this is the picture given in Robbins also. What stain we can use? We can use PAS also, we can use silver stain also. So this point we have to keep for future theory MCQ or of AIMS exam. The examiner can ask this kind of MCQ, right? Now you can see here, this is the membranous glomerulonephritis showing a spike and dome characteristic, right? So what is this? This is the light microscopy. This is the light microscopy where we are seeing this, right? The above one is the PAS staining and the below one is the silver staining, right? And in the below one, when we are doing the silver stain, remember all the black color thing, all the black deposits are the basement membrane, right? Black deposit is the basement membrane, and those who are non-black areas, they are the immune complexes, right? So now you understood. That is how you will identify. So it is best seen in both PAS and silver. Here you can see PAS stain also, it is quite clearly seen in this area, right? So spike and dome will be seen on both PAS and silver stain. If you want to ask me who will be the better one, then I will tell that silver stain will be the superior to the PAS stain. If you want to ask like that, probably examiner will never ask. This is the MD pathology question where examiner will be asking, right? Not here, right? So now it's clear that it is the membranous glomerulonephritis, what I have shown you in this diagram. This was the question in AIMS exam, right? So answer is membranous glomerulonephropathy. What we are seeing, spike and dome appearance, granular immunofluorescence will confirm this one. Membranoproliferative will be also having granular, but they will be having tram track appearance. They will be having tram track appearance, or they will be having dense deposits, right, on electron microscopy. PSGN already we have discussed. There will be hump sign. They will also have granular, but they will be hump sign. Minimal change disease, you will not find any of these findings. They will be normally seen in the electron microscopy. Only there will be flattening of the podocyte food process, right? So now answer is A, membranous glomerulonephropathy. Come to the next question. Look at this question. This is again a question which was asked in AIMS 2017, right? You can see the history. A 50-year-old male, blurring of vision, massive proteinuria, fundus examination, eye is showing microaneurysm, cotton wool spots, dot blot hemorrhages, renal biopsy is there. So can you tell me what is the diagnosis for this question? I'm waiting for your answer. Yes, very good. Majority of you understood what is the answer here. Yes. See, wire loop and crescentic already we have learned, right? So already we have learned, so it's easy to rule out these two options on the first instance. We are not seeing any crescent here, right? Remaining thing is the amyloidosis and Wilson. This can be amyloidosis or Kimmel-Steele-Wilson disease. But amyloidosis will not be having, or you cannot confirm the diagnosis by seeing this picture only, right? For amyloidosis confirmation, you require Congo red staining, right? And this will be extracellular. Here what we are seeing, there is a deposit here. This is also looking extracellular only. But here, what is the characteristic finding? You can see there is a 4 nodules. I'm just circling that. There is a 4 nodules of the collagen, right? So this is called nodular. As I said, it is a collagen deposition. So collagen deposition is called as sclerosis. So this is called as nodular glomerulosclerosis. Nodular glomerulosclerosis is the another name of Kimmel-Steele-Wilson lesion. Remember, this is the another name of Kimmel-Steele-Wilson disease, right? Yes, Arup, you are right. For confirmation of the diagnosis of amyloidosis, you require Congo red staining with polarized microscopy, and then you will be seeing apple green color that will confirm the diagnosis, right? So we are talking about this. This is the case of diabetes, right? So see the history. History is also suggestive of diabetes mellitus, right? So diabetes mellitus patient will be having most specific finding. Remember, this is called most specific finding, another MCQ. Nodular glomerulosclerosis, where you are seeing the nodule, right? And what is the most common finding? That is the another important MCQ in exam. Diabetes in kidney, most common finding. We are talking about kidney, right? In kidney, most specific finding is nodular or Kimmel-Steele-Wilson disease. Most common finding is diffuse glomerulosclerosis. Diffuse glomerulosclerosis. Right? So this is the nodule. That is why it is called as nodular glomerulosclerosis. You can see this is the bigger picture where you can appreciate these big nodules, right? So this is the nodular or Kimmel-Steele-Wilson disease, right? So this is called nodular glomerulosclerosis or Kimmel-Steele-Wilson disease. No, it is not FSGS. Yes, very good. Maria, yes, you are right. If examiner is asking in diabetes mellitus, what is the earliest finding on histology? That is important. Earliest finding on histology, then your answer should be capillary basement membrane thickening. Capillary basement membrane thickening. Can you tell me this controversial question? What is the earliest finding in the lab of the diabetic nephropathy patient? This is the another important controversial question. What should be the earliest lab finding? Microglobulinuria or microalbuminuria or increase in GFR? Very nice, very good. So remember, your answer should be increase in GFR is earlier than microalbuminuria. Right? So it should be earlier than microalbuminuria. Remember, in Robbins, it is written earliest finding in diabetic nephropathy lab finding is microalbuminuria, which is a wrong statement. You go and see the Harrison, you will find there is a within the first year of the onset, there is an increase in size of the kidney, and because of that, vascularity is increased, and size, vascularity, GFR will be increased. Right? So first finding will be increase in GFR, not microalbuminuria. Remember this point, right? Now come to the another one. This is the, I'm telling you, this will be your future AIMS question, image-based question. Diabetes patient, what is this gross specimen says? What is this gross? What is this gross specimen? Can you tell me? So look at this one. If I am showing you, this is the kidney specimen and this is the hilar area from where the you can see this is medullary pyramids, right? So this is the medulla. In simple words, I will say that it is the medulla showing medullary pyramids, and outer side is cortex, right? And the blood supply is going on. See, I'm just showing you. Sorry. This is the blood supply, right? Blood supply is going like this to medullary pyramid, like this, right? What is happening in diabetes? What is happening in diabetes? There is a microangiopathy. Because of this microangiopathy, there will be ischemia. This ischemia will be causing necrosis. I understood. Because of the microangiopathy, there will be necrosis. And this microangiopathy will be causing necrosis to which area? Which area will be first showing the damage and necrosis? This area or this distal area? Can you see? So this is away from the blood supply. So who will be affected first? This will be affected first. This will be affected first, right? So these are the necrotic areas, right? And these necrotic areas are looking like a finger. That is why it is called as papillary necrosis or necrotizing papillitis So this is the concept we have to understand. Why this is happening? Because of the microangiopathy, because of the ischemia, blood supply has been reduced, and that reduction in the blood supply, distal part of the medullary pyramid will be having characteristic necrotic pattern, which is called as papillary necrosis, right? In this diagram, all these, remember, all these white color structure is the representative of papillary necrosis, right? So all these white color is the papillary necrosis. Remember, what is the most common cause of papillary necrosis? Analgesic abuse or diabetes? Can you tell me? This is again another controversial question. Very good. So remember, most common cause of papillary necrosis, your answer must be diabetes mellitus is more commoner than analgesic abuse, right? So this point also we should keep in mind, right? So papillary necrosis, gross specimen in the kidney. I'm telling you, examiner, they are fond of asking. I have seen 2 to 3 times question had been asked in AIMS exam, image-based question. right? I will tell you what was that image base which had been asked recently in exam, right? Now look at this question. AIMS November 2015. The same question had been asked. Right now you can see there is a 55-year-old female, headache, dizziness. Yes, you can give me the answer in this poll box. And the patient has history of repeated urinary tract infection. CT scan was done, and irregular shaped kidneys with deep coarse scars were there. Percutaneous renal biopsy was done. What is your diagnosis? Very good, very nice. Everybody is telling me the right answer. Yes. Very good, very good. Hussain is telling the exact thing which I was. Hussain, Ashish, Mahesh, very good. These are the absolutely perfect. See, I want to tell you one thing. If you look at this biopsy carefully, if you look at this biopsy in this area, what are these cells? These are lymphocytic infiltrate. These are mononuclear, right? These are not neutrophil. These are lymphocytic infiltrate. Once you have seen lymphocytic infiltrate, so obviously acute pyelonephritis is ruled out. Right? Did you understand? Acute pyelonephritis is ruled out. There is nothing suggestive of malignant nephrosclerosis or benign nephrosclerosis, which we are seeing here. I will tell you what will be the finding in the malignant and benign nephrosclerosis, right? Now, what is remaining here is the chronic pyelonephritis, right? It is called as chronic pyelonephritis. So, answer is chronic pyelonephritis. Look at this one. What I wanted to show you, how you are going to identify chronic pyelonephritis. Chronic pyelonephritis. See, the word is chronic. That is why you will see inflammation is chronic. So you are seeing number one, it is the lymphocytic infiltrate, right? Because of this chronicity and lymphocytic infiltrate, yes, Vatsal, there will be small contracted kidney in the chronic pyelonephritis. Because of the scarring, they will be small and they will be contracted. And remember, this will be irregular, right? So what I am showing you here, look at this one. All these areas which I am encircling, these are the dilated tubules because of the chronic inflammation, right? Because of the chronic inflammation, tubules are dilated, right? And this will be abnormal dilatation. Dilated tubules, abnormally dilated tubules are there, right? Inside this abnormally dilated tubules, you are seeing the hyaline substances. These are the hyaline substances, right? So now can you see there are three important things I am showing you. Number one, lymphocytic infiltrate. Because of this inflammation, there is a tubular dilatation, and that is containing hyaline substances which are the eosinophilic. This dilated tubules with hyaline substance, it is giving appearance like a thyroid follicle which is filled with the colloid, right? So this is looking like a thyroid follicle. That is why it is called as thyroidization of tubule. Older AIMS question also. Thyroidization of tubule is seen in chronic pyelonephritis. This is the old MCQ in AIMS exam. Very old, when I used to write. Now you can see in 2015 AIMS exam, this diagram examiner had asked. So that is why I always say that whatever MCQ had been asked earlier, read those diagrams. They will be your future image-based MCQ, right? So it's clear. It is thyroidization of the tubule with chronic inflammation causing dilated tubules because of the inflammation. And in this inflammatory dilated tubule, you will be seeing the pink or eosinophilic hyaline globules, which is giving follicle of the thyroid-like appearance. That is why it is called as thyroidization of the tubule. Capsular drops and fibrin is seen in diabetic nephropathy, which we cannot explain here, right, Maya? It will be seen in diabetic nephropathy. Whatever I have shown you, when you are seeing the Bowman capsule is having fibrin cap, that is called as cap, right? And drop, when you will be seeing them in the parietal capsule, that will be called as drop. And that drop will be the collagen deposition. That is the thing you have to understand, right? So chronic pyelonephritis. Right now I am showing you, this is the another picture, because in this option, I have shown you benign and malignant nephrosclerosis. So how you have to rule out by understanding these things. First of all, see, this is the gross specimen of the benign nephrosclerosis. or in simple words, I will say that benign hypertension, right? In benign hypertension, there will be a gross appearance. What will be the gross appearance in benign hypertension? You are seeing, because of, see, what is happening in benign hypertension, there is a chronic ischemia, right? Because of the chronic ischemia, there will be repeated episodes of the infarction and fibrosis. Infarction, fibrosis, infarction, fibrosis, right? So when this sequence is repeating themselves, then there will be a scar formation, or you can say there will be not a scar formation, I should say there is a fibrotic band formation, right? So because of this, what will happen? There will be a fibrosis, and this fibrosis will be granular. As you can see in this diagram, all these white color areas are the granular fibrosis. This is called as leathery granularity. Leathery granularity, right? So leathery granularity is feature of benign hypertension in the kidney, right? So benign hypertension, leathery granularity will be there, right? So no, it's not flea bitten. Don't understand, don't mistake this. Listen to me very carefully. That is why I'm saying listen to me very carefully. What I am showing you here, it is the leathery granularity. Because of the ischemia, there is an infarction, then there is a fibrosis, right? Then there is a fibrosis. Because of that fibrous band, we are seeing white color areas. These are the leathery granularity, right? So this is seen in benign hypertension. When you will take the section from these areas, you will see arteriole lumen is very narrow, because they are having full of hyaline material. So this is the microscopic examination, right? Microscopic examination. What I am showing you here, the lumen is very narrow. Lumen of arteriole is very narrow. This is the arteriole. Right? Lumen is narrow. And what we are seeing here, this eosinophilic deposit, is the hyaline. That is why it is also called as hyaline arteriolosclerosis. So benign hypertension, what are the changes you will see? Hyaline arteriolosclerosis. Hyaline arteriolosclerosis, right? So these are the two important things we have to remember in case of the microscopic examination, right? Eosinophilic hyaline deposition is reason for the hyaline arteriolosclerosis, and lumen will be narrowed because of this hyaline deposition, right? So can you see? There are two important things. I repeat, there are two important things in benign hypertension. Number one is leathery granularity due to the fibrosis. And number two, on microscopic examination, there is a hyaline arteriolosclerosis, one of the very frequently asked question in exam. And look at this one. This is the hyaline deposition. Can you see? This is the hyaline deposition, right? And this is the benign hypertension image. So this is the benign hypertension image where you are seeing hyaline arteriolosclerosis. So you can notice there is a narrowing of the lumen, and this pink material which you are seeing is the hyaline material. So hyaline is there, vessel has been compromised. So this type of picture should be there to say that it is a benign hypertension, right? Look at this one. This question was the AIIMS question in 2017. That is what I was telling you. Many of the gross picture had been asked in AIIMS exam. So can you tell me what should be the right answer here? Yes, very good. So now I got the right answer from majority of you. I'm very happy for that. See, patient BP is very high. Autopsy finding is shown here. And in this autopsy finding, what you are observing in this picture, in the gross picture, I will just show you the bigger picture here. Look at this gross picture. And on the external surface, this is the external surface. And here you can see, this is the cut section. Both areas you are seeing, there are so many pinpoint hemorrhages. Can you see this pinpoint hemorrhages? Both areas, right? So this is the pinpoint hemorrhages. Just I'm writing short form. Pinpoint hemorrhages are both places, right? So why this pinpoint hemorrhages are there? Because of the rupture of arterioles and capillaries. This is due to rupture of arterioles and capillaries, right? So because of this rupture of arteriole and capillaries, there is a pinpoint petechial hemorrhages. right? So there is a petechial hemorrhages which are pinpoint, right? So we all know that this is the pinpoint petechial hemorrhages, and this appearance is the reason for the name called flea-bitten appearance, right? So flea-bitten kidney. So examiner, see why examiner is not using the word flea-bitten. I will tell you. This question had been asked in AIMS earlier also. They have not used the flea-bitten name. They have just asked what will be the gross finding of the kidney in a malignant hypertension patient, right? Petechial hemorrhages, large kidney, small kidney, like that. So what I want to say that benign hypertension kidney will be small. Remember, listen to me very carefully. Benign hypertension, because of the chronic ischemia, infarction, fibrosis, they will be small. But here in malignant hypertension, remember, size of kidney will be variable. This is the line in Robbins. So we should never think that size will be reduced in malignant hypertension. We are seeing malignant hypertension. Malignant hypertension, size of the kidney will be variable. So it is not conclusive, right? So did you understand? So flea-bitten can be, yes, Maya, you can find this in infective endocarditis, subacute bacterial endocarditis, in vasculitis, pyelonephritis, many other conditions you will be seeing this flea-bitten appearance, right? So when you will take the section from these flea-bitten areas, this will be the appearance you will be seeing on microscopic examination. What is you are seeing in this microscopic examination? I will explain like this. This is the blood vessel lumen, endothelial lining, right? Malignant hypertension, blood flow will be faster and random. So they will cause endothelial damage, right? So first, what I want to say that because of the faster blood flow, when they will impact on the lumen, what will happen? The pressure or the force will be transmitted to the surrounding tunica media, right? Usually tunica media will be having a smooth muscle of 1 to 2 layer thickening, 1 to 2 layer thickening. But because of this pressure, because of this force, there will be hyperplasia of the tunica media. There will be hyperplasia of the smooth muscle. There will be hyperplasia of the smooth muscle like this. So that is why it is called as hyperplastic. Hyperplastic, because there is a hyperplasia of the smooth muscle. So it is called as hyperplastic arteriolosclerosis. Arteriolosclerosis, number one, right? So hyperplastic arteriolosclerosis will be seen in malignant hypertension. And benign hypertension, you remember, it was hyaline arteriolosclerosis, right? Benign, it was hyaline arteriolosclerosis, right? Now this endothelium will be getting damaged. Because of the endothelial damage, fibrin will be coming outside, and fibrin will be getting deposited over the surface of all these smooth muscle, right? So fibrin will be deposited on the surface. So there will be pink fibrin deposit, and this is called fibrinoid necrosis. Fibrinoid necrosis, right? So hyperplastic arteriolosclerosis. Maya, don't worry. You can see the video again and again after this, right? If I will repeat, it will be the wastage of time because there are so many slides still to be discussed, right? So try to understand. Again, I repeat, but don't ask me again because you can see this video multiple times. So why to repeat, right? So again, I repeat, there is a hyperplasia of the smooth muscle. That is why it is called as hyperplastic arteriosclerosis, right? There is a damage of the endothelium, as I have told you. Whenever there is a damage of the endothelium, coagulation pathway will be activated, fibrin will be formed, which is coming outside and getting deposited on the surface of the smooth muscle, which is called as fibrinoid necrosis. If you look at the entire appearance, it looks like a onion skin. So that is why it is also called as onion skin appearance. So these are the triad of the malignant hypertension, right? Hyperplastic arteriolosclerosis, fibrinoid necrosis, onion skin appearance, right? Now look at this picture. Look at this one. This is the, if you look at this one, this area, this is the area where you can see there are, first you can notice this is the onion skin, right? Because of why there is a onion skin? Because of the concentric hyperplasia of the smooth muscle, right? So you can see there is a hyperplasia of the smooth muscle also in a concentric manner, right? You can see there is a appearance like this. Can you see? This is like this, right? So concentric manner, there is a hyperplasia of the smooth muscle. That is why it is called as hyperplastic arteriosclerosis. Third important thing which you will notice, you can see there is a bright pink color structure. So this pink color material is the fibrinoid necrosis. Fibrinoid necrosis, right? Yes, it is normal. We cannot say it is normal, but in this case, it is normal. This is the special state. There is some thickening of the basement membrane. Mayank, there is some thickening of the basement membrane in the basement in the glomeruli, which I can see here. So I cannot say that it is normal. It should be some thickening of the basement membrane is there, which I'm seeing very prominently, right? Like here you can see. Right? It is not important why you are seeing that thing. That is not important. Look at that one. Which is important is the onion skin appearance. See hyperplastic areas and fibrinoid necrosis. Fibrinoid necrosis, you can see here, it is very prominently seen in this diagram. You can see pink fibrin, and this is called fibrinoid necrosis. Right? So these are the malignant hypertension, right? So now you can see how I have explained all these things so that we can understand. So now if you look at this picture, what is this? It's a flea bitten kidney where you will see, you will find them in malignant hypertension. Right? It will be seen in malignant hypertension. It can be seen in subacute bacterial endocarditis. It can be seen in vasculitis. It can be seen in HUS. There are so many things, right? But the basic reason is the rupture of the arterioles and capillaries. That is the point we have to remember, right? Papillary necrosis will not be like this. Already we have discussed. It will be seen in diabetes. Chronic pyelonephritis, they will be having irregular scar, and it will not be like this, right? Amyloidosis will be showing some enlargement, and they will not be like this, right? That petechial hemorrhages which we are seeing is the characteristic, right? Or you can say diagnostic also on gross examination, right? So we have discussed these things. Now I am going to tell you the next one. So next slide is this one. A 9-month-old boy dies of the renal failure. See, the history is 9-month-old. This is the pediatric patient. He is dying of the renal failure. Can you tell me the right answer? Autopsy specimen. This is the kidney autopsy specimen. Very, very characteristic. Very characteristic. Examiner will be asking you this question. Very nice. Many of his students are getting this because of the age, I think. Right? I should not have wrote the age of the patient, right? Otherwise, necrosis we can rule out. Flea bitten kidney we have ruled out. So there are two options remaining, right? So that is what I said. Once you understand, in exam also it will be like that only. They will be asking like this: papillary necrosis ruled out, flea bitten ruled out. Now there is two things: either it is autosomal recessive polycystic disease or autosomal dominant, right? Remember one thing: in autosomal dominant, when you will see the kidney, both kidney will be having problem, and they will be having cyst throughout the surface, both external surface and cut surface. That is the autosomal dominant, right? That is the autosomal dominant. Cut surface, external surface, both area, they will be having cyst, which can be serous also, which can be blood also, right? But in this question, answer is the autosomal recessive. Why? Because you are not finding any cyst here. So what you are finding? Can you tell me what is the finding here? That is the question in All India exam. This is the right answer, right? So what is the finding? I wanted to show you here in this diagram. See that what I have told you here. Again, I repeat what I have told you here when I was telling you about the autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease. There are cysts on both cut section and external surface. External surface cut section. Now look at this diagram. This is the external surface of the kidney. How is this? This is the smooth one. Remember, this is smooth but not normal. This is smooth but not normal. Right. So what I am showing you here, this is the cut section. In this cut section, if I will show you again, I will show you this diagram. What you are observing, or you should observe, that there are dilated collecting ducts, dilated collecting ducts, which is radially arranged. So you can see these are radially arranged. So now you can see there are so many. You can see this diagram. If I will draw, it will be distorted. So you can see there are so many fine striations are going on. Right? Can you see here in the cortex? In cortical area, you can see very prominently it is given. But remember, it will be what I am showing you. These are all the dilated collecting ducts. Dilated collecting ducts, they are radially arranged. That is the another important point. Radially arranged. This will be involving both cortex and medullary collecting duct. Right? So it will be involving both cortex and medullary collecting duct. So this is the key feature of autosomal recessive. Yes, Shantanu, external surface is smooth but not normal. As you can see, there is a bulge also, but there are no cysts. Can you notice there are no cysts here? But when you will see the autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease, now you can see this is the autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease. Cysts are present on the surface, both cut surface and external surface. You will be finding the similar presentation. They will not be smooth. Can you see? It is not smooth. But when you find the smooth finding or the characteristic finding is this one, the cut section one, dilated collecting duct, radially arranged, and these are involving cortex and medulla both. So this is the feature of autosomal recessive polycystic kidney disease. So answer is autosomal recessive polycystic kidney disease, right? So now you understand how to differentiate the autosomal recessive from the dominant, right? So answer was autosomal recessive. Now, can you tell me the answer for this question? It's a very simple question. It's a very simple question. Many times this question had been asked theoretically in All India exam. See, a carpenter with poisoning evaluated for his urine examination. This is the finding on urine examination. So what is your answer here? Very nice, very nice, very good, very nice. All you are identifying the exact the urinary crystal I have shown here. But can you tell me what will be the diagnosis in this case? What poisoning this person is having? Can you tell me? Yes, somebody is coming closer to it. Yes, there is no option here. So it's a simple case, right? So here, see what I am showing you. This is the one crystal. What is this? Calcium oxalate. What is this? Same calcium oxalate. And what is this? Can you see this? It looks like as if you are going in a ground, rainy season, and there are so much of mud. This is called muddy casts. These are muddy casts. Remember what I'm showing you here? This is the muddy casts. Calcium oxalate crystals, muddy cast in the urine. Muddy cast is suggestive of acute tubular necrosis. Remember, this is another important MCQ. Muddy cast is suggestive of acute tubular necrosis. Then calcium oxalate is coming also in the urine. So this case is of ethylene glycol poisoning. Ethylene glycol poisoning, right? So ethylene glycol poisoning, because see what will happen, this poison will come and they will damage the acute tubules, right? So they will be damaging the tubule, proximal tubule will be damaged most commonly, right? So because of the damage of the tubule, there will be muddy cast formation, right? Tubular damage is there, acute tubular necrosis is there, that is called acute tubular necrosis. Muddy cast will be there, and urine will be showing the calcium oxalate because glycol will be converted into the oxalate, and now that oxalate is coming into the urine, right? So now you got the answer. It will be a yes, very good. It is a nephrolithiasis also, where you will find all these things, but here diagnosis is the ethylene glycol poisoning. So this patient is having ethylene glycol poisoning, right? So I wanted to tell you one important thing. What is this crystal? Can you tell me? I know that. We all know that it is calcium oxalate, right? Look at this one. What is this crystal? I know that. We all know that it is calcium oxalate. This was the AIMS question. 2016. This was the question in AIMS exam. Similar image is given in Harrison also, right? And similar diagram is given in Harrison also, and that is the question which had been asked in AIMS exam. What I wanted to let you know that what will be the future question. Remember, when we are seeing here, this is dumbbell shape. This is dumbbell shape. Remember, dumbbell shape is the calcium oxalate monohydrate. Remember, it is monohydrate. Examiner can ask this question in the future AIMS exam. Calcium oxalate monohydrate, it will be dumbbell shape. And when you are seeing this is like a envelope. Can you see there is a cross striations? This is how sometimes it is described. Cross striations. Cross striations are seen in envelope. So when you see envelope shape calcium oxalate, this is the calcium oxalate dihydrate. So dihydrate was the question in exam. Just Abhishek, I am going to finish that lecture. Don't worry, it will be over by within 5 to 10 minutes. Don't worry, just 5 to 10 minutes. Wait, and because there is a one more important thing, renal cell cancer, I am going to discuss. After that, it will be over. Don't worry. So envelope shape is the calcium oxalate, right? So now we can see these are the two important forms of the calcium oxalate crystal: dihydrate and monohydrate. Monohydrate will be dumbbell shape. Dihydrate will be envelope shape, right? And then we are seeing the acute tubular necrosis. This is called muddy casts, right? So muddy cast will be suggestive of acute tubular necrosis, which we are seeing in this one, right? What will be the future question? Future question will be this crystal. What is this crystal? Can you see this? If you look at this crystal, it is looking like this, which is a lid of the coffin. So it is described as a coffin lid appearance, right? If you have seen so many English movie, you will say that coffin lid. And if you are very good in physics, then you will say that prism-like appearance of the urinary crystal, right? So remember, both are the description for the struvite stones or struvite crystals, struvite crystals, right? Which is also called as triple phosphate. Triple phosphate. Why I said this can be future question? Previous year, All India exam, there was a question: if a patient is having laxative abuse, which type of crystal you will see in the urine? Struvite crystal will be seen in the urine whenever patient is having laxative abuse. See how examiner can ask question in future AIMS exam. Patient was on laxative abuse or patient was on laxative. Urine examination is done. These are the crystal. What is your diagnosis? Answer is triple phosphate struvite urinary crystal, right? So it's clear. Right. So now come to this last question, Abhishek. Now it is the last question, right? So now we can see there is a renal mass. Histopathology is given. What is the true statement? Can you tell me for this question? This is a tough question for you, I know, but remember, this is the question which examiner may ask in exam. Yes, Mahesh, it can be not only the laxative abuse, Mahesh, you are also right. Even the urea splitting bacterias, even the urea splitting bacterias can cause, right? So laxative abuse, it came in All India exam. That is why I emphasize even urea splitting bacteria can cause this struvite crystal, right? So tell me what is the right answer. Remember, it is not clear cell. It is not clear cell. It's a renal cell carcinoma. Absolutely perfect. But tell me what is the diagnosis of this cancer. Then you will be able to tell about all these things. Okay, first let me tell you. Can you tell me all these things? Where you will see VHL von Hippel-Lindau gene mutation? Which RCC? Which RCC you will see VHL mutation? So it will be seen in, yes, very good. It will be seen in clear cell type of RCC, right? Very good. Where you will see trisomy 7 and 17? This is the All India question. Trisomy 7 and 17. Papillary, very nice, very good, Jitain, very good. It is papillary renal cell carcinoma, papillary RCC. Where you will see BHD gene mutation. BHD stands for bird hog Dube syndrome. BHD stands for bird hog Dube syndrome, right? So where you will see BHD gene mutation, BHD gene mutation will be seen in chromophobe RCC. Remember, BHD is most commonly associated with chromophobe renal cell carcinoma, and chromosomal 3p mutation is again, it is associated with clear cell RCC, right? So now you understood these are the genetic changes which examiner is trying to ask. Now the question is, what is this image? The question is, what is this image? Which cancer it can be? Right? So what is this image? It is a chromophobe RCC. Remember, it is not clear cell RCC, it is chromophobe RCC. I will explain you how you will identify in your exam. It's easy to identify. Now you can see this is the chromophobe RCC. So what is the characteristic of chromophobe renal cell carcinoma? Right? So first of all, you should remember it is associated with BHD gene mutation. Chromophobe RCC, when you are seeing the microscopic examination, they will be having three characteristic finding. Remember, three characteristic finding. Number one, if you see the tumor cells, if you observe here in the surrounding tumor cells, normally tumor cells will be having Mahesh, don't worry, keep revising. Everybody will be forgetting. Just revision is the essence, right? So what I'm showing you here, these are the two cells, right? And their membranes are very thick. So we can say that these are the thick cell membrane, thick cell membrane, or you can say distinct cell membrane. But I don't want to confuse with the lucrative language of the pathologist. I want to simplify this: thick cell membrane, right? Thick cell membrane, where you see in animal tissue or in plant tissue. In plant tissue, remember, in plant tissue, sclerenchyma, parenchyma, which we used to study in botany, right? So thick cell membrane, that is why it is called as plant cell like tumor. Plant cell like tumor, right? So because of this thick cell membrane, it is called as plant cell like tumor. Now just have a bigger view of this cell. What you will identify in this bigger view, nucleus will be very small and very dark. This is called pycnotic nuclei. So second characteristic feature will be pycnotic, because chromatin is condensed pycnotic nuclei, right? So pycnotic nuclei is there, and this pycnotic nuclei is also described as a nuclear resins. See, that is why I said I don't want to use that lucrative language of the pathologist, but remember, nuclear resin word examiner will use. It was the question in PGI exam. Nuclear resins, second finding, right? So first was thick cell membrane, second is the nuclear resin, and third, you will notice that around the nucleus there will be a perinuclear halo, right? So third, you will notice there is a perinuclear halo. Perinuclear halo. So these are the three findings which examiner had asked in PGI exam, right? Which of the following renal cell carcinoma will be having plant cell like tumor cell, nuclear resins, and perinuclear halo, right? So now you can see in this, now you look at all these cells. If you look closer to these cells, you can notice that their cytoplasmic membranes are very thick. Usually you will not find this much of thick cytoplasmic membrane in a human cells, right? So that is why it is a thick membrane. You can see this is the thick cell membrane, thick cell membrane. Now look at the nucleus. Can you see the nucleus? Can you see the nucleus? How is the nuclei in all of them? All these nuclei are very condensed, very small, just like a resins, right? Resins which we eat, right? So just like a resin, so that is why it is called as nuclear resins. Nuclear resins. And when you will see the cytoplasm, can you see the cytoplasm is granular, right? Can you see the cytoplasm is granular? Sir, in some nucleus is not present. Yes, some they may not have nucleus because they will be having necrosis. Necrotic cell will not be having nucleus, so that is not a deviating feature. If nucleus is not present, because it's common, tumor cells will be having death, and because of death, they will be having necrosis. That is why there is no nuclei, right? So focus on those things which is visible. Why you are seeing there is no cell, right? Focus on the thick membrane. Focus on that compact nucleus which is looking very hyperchromatic, and focus on this cytoplasm which is not clear. Try to understand, focus on the cytoplasm which is not clear. That is why you will, that is how you will avoid confusion from the clear cell RCC. Clear cell RCC cytoplasm will be extremely clear. What we are seeing here, cytoplasm is granular. Cytoplasm is granular, right? Cytoplasm is granular. So now you understood there are three things you have to remember: plant cell like thick cell membrane, nuclear resins, and perinuclear halo. That will be suggestive of chromophobe RCC, and chromophobe RCC will be having BHD gene mutation, right? And chromophobe RCC we can identify with the special stain also. This is the special stain for the chromophobe RCC, which is called as Hales colloidal iron stain. Hales colloidal iron stain. So Hales colloidal iron stain, if you look at the cytoplasm, now you can see cytoplasm is showing blue granularity, right? Cytoplasm is showing blue granularity. That will confirm the chromophobe RCC, right? Why it is called as chromophobe? Because it will not be having affinity for the color things, right? So it is, that is why it is name has been given chromophobe, right? Chromophobe because they are having iron also. They are having iron into their cytoplasm, and when you will apply this, they will be catching up the color, and this bluish coloration you are seeing, that is why it is called as chromophobe, right? So now you can see that it is a chromophobe RCC, right? Now you can see this is the another picture. What I wanted to tell you here, this is the RCC which is clear cell type. So chromophobe, you can see why there was a different structure. And how it is different, can you see there is a all clear, all these are the tumor cells only, all these are the tumor cells, and their cytoplasm is clear, their cytoplasm is clear. Whereas if you look at this one, chromophobe RCC, you can see cytoplasm is the granular, right? Cytoplasm is granular, right? So here it is a clear cell RCC where you can see the cytoplasm is clear, and in this patient you will see VHL gene mutation, VHL gene mutation which is present on chromosome 3 short arm. So that is why 3p deletion will be also there. Or you can see there is a, yes, you can say vacuolated cytoplasm. Clear means vacuolated. Why it is clear? That is the another important MCQ. It is clear because they have glycogen plus lipid. Both will be present in their vacuole. Remember, both will be present in the vacuoles of the clear cell RCC. Right? So now you got the clear cell RCC will be like this. Last, I am just showing you this one is the, now you can see there is a blood vessel going on like this. There is a blood vessel going on like this. So this is called fibrovascular core. Remember, when you are seeing a tumor cell like this, right? So when you are seeing a tumor cell, these are the tumor cell, suppose, and there is a blood vessel. There is a blood vessel and collagen. So I will just make with different colors so that it's easy for you to understand. Suppose this is the tumor cell, right? This is the tumor cell, and this is the blood vessel, right? Blood vessel plus fibrous tissue. So blood vessel plus fibrous tissue is called as fibrovascular core. Fibrovascular core. Right, so fibrovascular core. When you find fibrovascular core, then you say that it is a true papillary carcinoma. Remember, then you will be saying that it is a true papillary. Why I'm emphasizing when there is no fibrovascular core, it is called as pseudo papillary. Like some pancreatic cancer, you will be seeing pseudo papillary RCC, right? So pancreatic cancer, you will be seeing pseudo papillary RCC, right? Because there is a no fibrous or vascular core. Why I wanted to say that there is a fibrous vascular, this is the blood vessel. Why I wanted to emphasize? Because kidney cancer is highly angioinvasive. They will be having affinity for the blood vessel involvement. So this blood vessel involvement will be most commonly seen in which RCC? So remember, this is the papillary RCC. Papillary RCC will be most angioinvasive because of the papilla. Why? Because papilla is having vascular core, right? So that is why you will be studying in Robbins also that renal cell carcinomas are so angioinvasive that they will be involving the IVC, and through the IVC they will be coming and they will be involving the atrium also. So this is about papillary RCC. Why papillary RCC is so much angioinvasive? Because of the vascular core they are having, right? So that is why we have to understand the meaning of true papilla, right? And when you see papillary renal cell carcinoma, they will be associated with trisomy 7 and 17. Trisomy and 717 was the question in All India exam, right? So trisomy 717 will be seen in papillary RCC. So these are important point about the renal pathology. I hope I have explained things in a proper manner. Probably, see, don't get deviated. I have seen many students, they get deviated because they think that they should know this also, that also, I should read that also, that also. Try to focus on limited areas where what you have to focus. That is very important. You have to understand, you have to focus. When you want to achieve your goal, you have to focus. Don't get deviated by so many topics. Don't read all irregular things. Whatever is the common topic, see, after exam, what you ask yourself, what frustrates you more? What frustrates us more? That whatever we have read and we are committing mistake. When we are getting confused and we are committing mistake, we get more frustration. So how to avoid? Whatever you have made into your notes, you keep revising those topics. Now you don't read any new topic. I'm telling you, now you don't read any new topic if you're targeting this AIIMS exam, which is after 5 to 7 days, right? So that is how I think, Ranjit, there is no postpone like this. Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you so much for appreciation. Thank you, Prashant, for this appreciation. Thank you, Anvisha, Sonali, everybody. And I'm very thankful that you all were staying with so late for this discussion, and interaction was extremely good. And thank you so much, Sangeeta. Thank you, Jiten. Thank you so much. Ranjit, exam date will be on the 5th, I think. And thank you, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mahesh. Mahesh, any tips you are asking? Again, I will tell you, repeat whatever you have studied. You repeat those things only, right? Thank you so much, Anil. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And now I think you would have not taken your dinner also, so you go and have dinner. If you have taken dinner, have a good sleep. Now it's time to have a proper sleep by 12 o'clock. Wake up early in the morning. Avoid daytime sleeping. Avoid gossip. Avoid social medias. Focus on the exam. Aims will be easy question. I'm telling you this time. And see, now the image based questions are not tough. After all these discussion, probably I think you will not be finding it tough in your exam. So it will be easy for you. Don't worry. Go with full heart. You will definitely get a good rank in your exam. Thank you so much to all of you. Good night. And if you like my lecture, please like this lecture, and you can follow me in Unacademy platform also. And there are so many things: knowledge had, profile rating. So that thing also you can do. That will motivate me for the future lecture also, right? How to revise for the next 6 days, Anil? How to revise for the next 6 days, Anil? See, the same thing I will say, that whatever notes you are having, you revise those areas. See images of the Robbins. See some chapters of the Harrison, some unit like cardiovascular system. See the ECG. There will be some question from there in Robbins central nervous system, or whatever I have taught here. I think you go through these topics only. Remember, I'm telling that go through these topics only. There will be some question from these topic only. I can assure you. I have seen from my past 10 years of the career, whatever I teach, usually that comes in exam. So follow this. You will definitely get the question. Kalka schedule, Surya Kalka schedule will be hematology. It will be anemia, right? So I will be discussing about anemia mostly, right? So I think you are the most experienced. Okay, thank you so much, Prashant and Anil. Yes, I'm not telling that you trust me blindly, but I can tell you definitely I will give you the best possible advice for your success. I will never deceive anyone, right? So, yes, very good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good night.